I'm sure many of us know someone, if not you, who's felt uncomfortable talking about religion and money or just have feelings of shame or guilt about it. Welcome to Yahweh's Money, a podcast where we discuss the crossroads or intersections of religion and money. We're going to go deep into topics like tithing and saving and debt and so much more from the religious view. I'm your host, Shay Cook, CEO and founder, Crusaders for Change, LLC, and our co-host is Vanessa McNelly, one of our financial counselor, coach, educators. Let's talk about God and money. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Yahweh's Money, the crossroads of religion and money. And I'm one of your co-hosts, Shay Cook, and we have Vanessa here with me today as well. Hey, Vanessa.
Hi, how are you, Shay?
I'm good. April is Financial Literacy Month. So, yay. We like to celebrate it, us nerds that are nerds of money and finances and personal finances. We are excited to talk about being fed up with fraud.
Agree completely.
I know. I've been a victim, unfortunately, of fraud many times, and we're going to talk about that today. But as I mentioned, April is Financial Literacy Month, and we want to help you be aware and prepared for things that can affect your wallet, like fraud, right? So, according to the Federal Trade Commission, or some of us know it FTC, consumers lost nearly $8.8 billion to scams. That is crazy. So, fraud losses. So much money. I know, right? Fraud losses increased by more than 30% since 2021. I know a lot of that had to do with the pandemic. So why is fraud rising so rapidly in the US?
Gosh, my thinking is it's because it's so easy to commit fraud.
Yes.
It's one of those crimes that, most people, you see it behind the scenes, or it happens to elderly people, I think more so than younger people in a lot of ways. But it's so easy, and it's so easy to take advantage of somebody. Because I think as a whole, we're pretty trusting. And everything is done remotely now too. So it's just one of those things where when we see it happen, it's one of those things we don't know until later that it did happen. So
Exactly.
it's so simple. Yes, so easy to happen.
So easy, and it's behind the scenes. You got the dark web and all these other ways, electronically, technology. It just, like you said, it makes it so much easier. I mean, we're really living in the matrix. As I always tell people,
Right?
like,
Yeah.
everything is done behind the scenes. You don't even know what's going on. These robots and technology and artificial intelligent AI is taking over, and it's just making it hard for all of us to even, trust any kind of system, because you're scared you might be a victim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where you get all these emails from our credit card companies, or we're applying for something, and it's so easy to say, okay, is this real or is it not real? And especially, older people. I know my aunt all the time, she sends her emails to me. She's like, is this real? And I say, all you have to do is trace back where it came from.
Exactly.
So we look and we see, and I'm like, nope, not real, not real, not real. So it happens so many times a day to all of us. And I think it's one of those things where we get caught off guard, because we think, most of the time, okay, it looks so real, so real,
Yeah.
but it's not in
It's
most
not.
cases.
Even in the Bible, they talked about it in Proverbs 20:17, like, food gained by fraud tastes sweet, but one ends up with a mouthful of gravel. So, what I gather from that scripture is, yeah, it might taste sweet in the beginning for those committing the fraud, but eventually there are consequences to it. But we're, especially as victims, it's like you can go spiral down a path of letting that really affect you. And I know I have. The first time I had like major fraud was a credit card fraud about 10, 15 years ago. I was talking to my daughter about it the other day. I had bought a pillow pet from Columbia Mall, a local mall here in Maryland. And it was just one of those kiosks. And I gave my credit card. And a couple of days later, they were using my credit card like in Mexico, down in Florida. They literally had, duplicated or reused my credit card information to purchase things. And then from that point on, it was like every year, every other year, my credit card was being used, in some kind of fraud or scam situation. And it was just like, oh my God. And so after like 10 times of this happening, I was like, what the hell is going on? I had identity theft things going on and all these things. And it's like, your information's on the dark web. right? So
Mhm.
I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, that sucks. And it's just crazy. And it's say investment scams are
Ugh,
also high on the category of fraud. $3.8 billion loss, with consumers between 30 and 39 years of age reporting most cases of
yeah.
fraud. So even from credit card, or whether it's phishing, or I just heard of another one called squishing, when they're texting, all these different, it's so much
Mhm.
fraud. It's kind of overwhelming, actually. So
It's
much fraud.
very, very overwhelming because it can happen and it can happen over and over and over again. And especially like when it happens to you and you have to change everything.
Oh my
It's
God.
so time consuming and
It
so
really
frustrating.
is.
Yeah. So it's one of those things I think, especially as we become more of a technology driven
Mm-hmm.
community, it's so much easier to happen because we give our information out so willingly
So
because we
willingly.
have to in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
So yeah. And then you look at what's happening with banks right now too.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Lord, Lord, Lord. It's just
I
so much
know.
going on. It's
Yeah.
like, now is my
Yeah.
money safe? Yes.
Exactly.
It's insured by FDIC, but I mean, it's just so much. It's so
Right.
much. And you
Yeah.
hear it about it on the news all the time. And
Mhm.
so many of us have been victims of it. And you're so right, Vanessa. And every time I see the last fraud, let me backtrack a little bit,
Sure.
was on Thanksgiving Day last year.
Oh.
We had just finished our food. We were watching that documentary you told us about. Thank you, Vanessa. And we'll share that story another day. And I'm looking at my phone and I'm getting notices from PNC, my bank, that is this your purchase? And I'm like, so long story short, somebody had bought an
Mhm.
Oculus with my credit card, spent $1,500. So my mind immediately, because I've been a victim so many times, was like, I got like 20 things attached to this credit card.
Mhm.
Oh my God. Now
Mhm.
I got to go and change. Wait for the credit card first. Make
Yeah.
sure whatever is about to come will be paid. If not, I got to switch it to a temporary card and then back to
Mhm.
another card when the new card comes in. That's where my mind goes to. Like you said, all the work now it takes to because everything's automatic or can be
Right.
automatic, the subscriptions you have. And I'm just like, and I remember a couple times before that, I'm looking like, what's the best way? You can use PayPal to make sure everything's going through one account. So, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. So you're not having to change it that often, but not everybody accepts PayPal. So
Mhm.
it was just, like I said, so overwhelming, and just was like, I can't believe this. And on Thanksgiving of all days. So,
Yeah. And it is. It's completely overwhelming. And you do have to think that, okay, so it's going to take a week to get a new card. So for the next week, I can't use this account.
mm-hmm.
So what do you do, especially with people who only have one account or they use a
Exactly.
debit
Yeah.
card or yeah, it's so overwhelming. I know my debit card was lost. Gosh, I guess maybe 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
And it did. And I use my debit card for a lot of things now. I've
Mm-hmm.
tried to go back to just, using actual cash for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have it for about, gosh, I think it took maybe 7 or 8 days
Oh, wow.
to get it. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I guess I'm going to go back to credit cards for a
Exactly.
bit. Uh, but it does. It takes so long. And then you have to remember to go back in and make all those changes yourself too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
So what should you do if you're a victim of identity theft or fraud? Of course you should report it
Hmm.
to identitytheft.gov. This is a great resource, not only to report identity theft, but help you recover from it. And to report fraud, scams, or any bad business practices, you can go to reportfraud.ftc.gov. And remember, that is very important to report it, because that's the way to fight fraud. And actually, I reported it to identity theft when I dealt with them buying an Oculus on my credit card. But I
Hmm.
also went on there and said they took my information from my Microsoft account and all these other accounts. So there was a couple other places I was able to Google and report it to as well. But you definitely, after you do FTC and you're a victim, you want to call the companies where the fraud has occurred, place a fraud alert, and get your credit report.
Right.
Again, report to FTC, and then file a report with your local police department if you feel like it's, definitely. I've done that on several times, because obviously there's sometimes a real person. Well, there's always a real person behind it, but
Yeah.
sometimes it might just be technology. Somebody put some kind of whatever bug out there, and it's
Right.
gathering information. But you definitely want to report that as well. So
Yeah, and that just takes more time.
oh my God, so much more time. And it's like, Lord, help me. I mean, this is really a time where you have to pray and be patient because
Yeah.
you can. I mean, I was so mad, right? So I'm like, Lord, why? I always ask, Lord, why? Why me?
Mhm.
And the only thing I get is, well, you're in personal finances, you're helping people, so you need to be, which is to me sometimes stupid even saying out loud, is you need to have experience. I don't want this kind of
Right?
experience. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it does teach you patience, and it
Mm.
does teach you, that sometimes other things are more important than we think they are.
Mm.
After this happens, you're like, okay, so taking this very seriously is something that I really need to do. And we need
Mhm.
to always tell our clients that too, because it is a
Mm.
very serious matter.
Yeah.
But, unfortunately, it's going to happen to all of us at some point, at least once or
At
twice or
least once or
a million
twice.
times in our lives.
Exactly.
And it teaches us to, kind of safeguard our
Mm.
identity a little bit more too. We can't be as free as we want to be with things. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very, very frustrating.
I
And it's
know. It is. And my husband's like, well, maybe you should stop shopping online. I'm like, what? Everybody shops online. Like, that's
yeah,
not an answer. Like,
yeah,
that's not a
exactly.
solution. It's not a solution. I mean,
It's not a good answer,
no,
right?
it's not. I mean, he does too, but I understand what he meant. He's like, well, your card must be out there in a
Mhm.
different lot of different sites.
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, but I try to use the secure options. Now I just
Yep.
try to use like my Apple Pay, which is very supposedly, I've never had any issues with that. So that's secure. You have Google Pay, all these different ways that have all this encryption behind it to help
Mhm.
you, make sure your card information is not out there. But it's a lot. It's a
It
lot.
is. Yeah. I actually saw something the other day about Apple Pay. And if somebody accesses your account, how hard it is to prove that it's not you,
Mm-hmm.
and that they can change your password very easily and all these things too.
Oh, here we go.
So, yeah, yeah. So it's one of those things where there's not a good answer. It's just, we have to just make sure we go and we take a look at our accounts and we make sure we notice when things happen so we
Exactly.
can get them handled, and we can get them handled quickly. Because
Mm-hmm.
if we don't do it, then, who knows what they're going to charge. So,
That's so true.
ugh,
And what are some
mm-mm-mm.
ways to prevent becoming a victim? I know we've talked about being very careful. Obviously, you don't want to give your personal or financial information in response to a request that you're unsure of.
Right.
I've been getting a lot of texts from Amazon, AT&T. I got one 2 days ago. It's from USPS, and I could tell it was not real, and it was like somebody like trying to fish for my
Right.
information. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, some people, I'm sure, I was like, somebody is falling for
Yeah.
this. I'm sure they're probably calling a number, or they click in the link, and then they put the spamware or the malware
Mm-hmm.
in your phone
Mm-hmm.
or computer, and now they got access to your information. So
Right.
I'm thank God, like Apple now, you're able to delete and then report it and all that kind of stuff for spam, or because I'm like, I'm so sick of these fake texts. you know?
I know. Yeah. And if you really look closely and you know what you're looking for, you can see something in there that
Mm,
it doesn't look
exactly.
right. There's something off about it.
Exactly.
Or always go back and see where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to come from a Chase account. It's not going to be you know my Chase 41793 at yahoo.com. uh, and when you look back at these things when they're fraud, that's exactly what that web address or the
mm-hmm.
the email address that it's coming from. So as long as you can take a second and you can educate yourself and then
Mm.
educate others on it too, especially people who are a little older.
Older, even
Yeah,
younger. The younger ones
yeah.
don't have a clue either, but you're right. Our
Mm-hmm.
elders, the older
Mm-hmm.
ones, yeah, they're more likely to be a victim, even though some of the reports show, like, again, with the investment fraud, that the
Right.
younger ones are getting hit as well, too.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it comes back to just not being knowledgeable
Mm,
about those things. So, when you're younger, you don't know what's happening either. So, educate yourself, educate others. If we have people in our lives that are more susceptible, which we all do,
mm-hmm.
make sure we have these open conversations because it does happen. And, that way we can train them and teach them what to do when it does happen.
Exactly. And going back to your point before, companies won't call, email, or text to ask you for your
Hmm.
personal information, such as social security number, bank account, credit cards. They're not texting us for that email. And usually, they'll say you call them. And that's the best
Right.
way is you
Right.
call a legit real number, make sure it says da 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 financial institution, da 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 credit or whatever. So you know
Right.
that you're talking to a real representative.
Hmm.
And if you do get an email or text message from a company you do business with and you think it's real, it's still best not to click on any links. Instead, contact them using a website that you know and that's trustworthy, or just look up their phone number,
Exactly.
like I said, and resist the
Hmm.
pressure to act immediately. I think that's some great advice. Like, take a step back, like Vanessa's saying, look at it because usually there's some misspelling. They're using a Gmail account and not an official,
Right.
government or business account, organization account. And you never want to pay someone who insists you pay with cryptocurrency. I haven't had that experience yet, but I've heard about it.
Yeah.
So, and usually when I watch like Netflix shows and stuff, it's people that are selling drugs that are using, but I'm not saying that's everybody, but it's just like they're running some kind of weird criminal in the organization. They're like, let's
Right.
pay me in cryptocurrency. I'm like, okay.
Because it's harder to track crypto, and I
Yeah.
know that's the reason they do it. But yeah, I've never had that happen to me either. So,
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully it won't happen to either of
I
us.
know
But
exactly.
we can stay in the bubble away from
Yeah,
cryptocurrency.
please.
So,
I don't want to be a part of that. And you never deposit a check or send money back to someone. So,
right.
yeah. And, there again in Proverbs 1, 2 through 3, it says, tainted wealth has no lasting value, but right living can save your life. The Lord will not let the godly go hungry, but he refuses to satisfy the craving of the wicked. So
Mm.
you can do all this wicked stuff, people that are trying to scam and are fraudsters, but eventually, you
Gonna catch
know,
up with
it's
you.
gonna catch up with you. Sometimes it takes longer for some than
It
others,
does.
but
It
I
does.
don't want
Yeah.
to be you.
Right, right. And that just reassures us too that no matter what happens, if we are doing the right thing and living the way God wants us to live,
Mm,
we are going to be taken care of.
yeah.
All of our wants may not be met, but all of our
Mm.
needs will always
All
be
our
met.
needs will be met. That is
Hmm.
so true. And it's just, I mean, and have you dealt with the victim recently and how have you consoled them, or what kind of other outside of what we shared today?
Yeah.
What kind of
You
advice
know,
have you provided?
So this happened to my father recently too.
Oh,
He gets a lot
no.
of phone calls. So
Mm.
when it's one of those things where when you think it sounds real, because they
Mm-hmm.
do make it sound real, so he had to get a new credit card, and I walked him through that process and how to change things over. So I think more than anything, it was embarrassing in that situation,
That
and
shame
I
and embarrassing
understand
can
that.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because you're like, I fell for that. How could I fall for something like that?
Yeah.
But in the moment, you don't want to be caught in a position where they're going to tell you, okay, if you don't do this, you're going to be penalized, you're going to have some extra fees accrued. People even say if you don't take care of this now, you could go to prison or to jail,
Yeah.
or the IRS is coming after
I
you or
know. Or
whatever it
Social
is.
Security Administration.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've gotten those
yeah.
calls.
And
Yeah.
they scare you. And if you
Yeah.
don't know, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's okay to not know, but it's okay to reach out to somebody who might have an answer. So that was the first thing that, we talked about. If you ever have any, concerns, you can always ask somebody else to take a look at it. It's okay. There's no judgment there.
Exactly.
Use somebody you trust, use somebody who works in finance,
Mm-hmm.
especially because they know a little bit more about what to look for. And then, make sure that you safeguard everything you have because
Mm,
that is so important. So
mhm,
just having those conversations and walking through the steps of what to do next and being there, as a support system, I think is something that we can all do as well. So that's been my most recent, time dealing with that was just kind of walking through the shame factor number one, and then walking through the steps to handle it and then make sure that you're at least taking some precautions so it's not as easy to happen again.
Exactly. That's great advice. And you're right that we talk about that on many episodes that the shame and the embarrassment is real, and
Hmm.
especially around money. And people will hold that in or not ask for help. And there shouldn't be any shame attached to that. It should be shame attached to the people that are, victimizing us, that
Right.
are the
Exactly.
violators, the
Exactly.
fraudsters, the scammers. That's who should be shamed, not us. And yeah, we need to be there for them, offer them that compassion, that empathy and sympathy, so they know that they're
Right.
not alone. Because as soon as somebody tell me they're a victim, I'm like, been there, done that. So let me tell you, I've been really hot and just disturbed, and you never know what somebody's going through. And
You
a
don't.
scammer or fraudster can meet somebody at the wrong time, which there are stories recently last year, where a
Hmm.
young male thought he had, I think it was like almost close to $1 million he thought on Robinhood. And there's a whole story
Hmm.
behind that. He committed suicide. And so you never know what somebody's going through their life. And then they see this and they get scared and do something crazy. And,
Right.
something that could have been fixed or that was wrong or it wasn't their fault. So it's just really sad.
Exactly.
But yeah, offering that, spiritual guidance, that comfort, emotional support, I think is very important.
Totally agree with you. Couldn't
Yeah.
couldn't say it any better.
Well, we're here at Crusaders for Change to help, people to get through this kind of thing. We can help you, point you in the right direction. We're not here to help you, we can help with, we're not here to help, not help with fraud. I guess, what am I
Right.
trying to say,
Yeah.
Vanessa?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what
Yeah, we can help with anything related to money. That's
Exactly,
the thing.
exactly. So we can
So,
point you in the right direction when it
exactly.
comes to fraud and getting help, but also offering that support and helping you
Right.
figure out, if you're having situations where you got to pay for something using your savings because now you didn't have your credit card or your debit card or
Mhm.
wherever that might be, or you need emergency assistance, we can help in those ways. So,
Right.
any
Exactly. And just make sure you're more prepared in the future.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Any final thoughts?
Just reach out to somebody if this happens to you or you're worried about this happening to you. Reach out to somebody that can kind of guide you in this. And unfortunately, a lot of us have had this happen multiple times.
Hmm.
So somebody who's been through it before can definitely be a great resource.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. This was a great conversation. I know we can go more detail when it comes to fraud, but there's a lot of great resources out there. I want to point you again to identitytheft.gov. That's a great resource for this from through the from the FTC. Another great resource, or reportfraud.ftc.gov. So thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to follow us wherever podcasts are found. And remember, it's always better Yahweh's way. Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the crossroads of religion and money. Also, we would love to hear your feedback on today's episode. So please leave us a review or just tell us what's on your mind. And remember to follow our podcast. If you have any questions or suggestions of topics for us to discuss, please email us at yahweh@crusaders4change.org. To hear all of Yahweh's Money latest episodes, please visit us at www.crusaders4change.org or wherever podcasts are found. God bless.